At some point, you'll be creating longer and longer if-else conditionals. And you may find that you can save programming time and clarify your code by using a switch conditional instead. The switch conditional takes only one possible condition. Normally, this is just a variable. You need to understand how a switch conditional works in order to use it properly. After the keyword of switch, a variable is identified within parentheses. PHP will then look at each case in order, trying to identify a matching value. As with any other use of strings and numbers in PHP, numeric values would not be quoted and string values should be quoted. After the case value section, a colon is going to appear, not a semicolon, and then this is going to be followed by the associated statements, which we normally indent just to make it easier to read. Now in PHP, once a matching case has been found, it's going to continue to go through the switch until it comes to the end of the switch conditional, which is the closing curly brace, or it hits a break statement, at which point it exits the switch construct. It's really important that you close every single case, even the default case, for consistency's sake, with the break. So something like this switch statement right here could be a rewrite of an if-else statement. Because the switch conditional uses the value of var as its condition, it first checks to see if var is equal to a value of 1, and if so, it's going to execute the statements. If not, it's going to see if var is equal to value 2 and then execute those statements. If neither of these conditions is met, the default action is going to be run. And the switch statement is saying the same thing. We're just using the switch conditional to construct this same sort of statement. So what we're going to do in this exercise is we're going to take the if-else-if statement that we created in the last exercise, and we're going to rewrite it using a switch conditional. So I'm just going to comment this out, so if we need any of this code, we can just copy paste it. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll rewrite this using our switch statement. Inside of the parentheses of the switch conditional, we'll put our variable name, and then we're going to start by creating our cases. So we'll begin with the case for red. So what happens so far is our first case is going to check to see if the post color has a value of red. And if so, then it's going to execute the statement, and then we're going to have the break statement, which would exit the switch conditional. And so we'll just keep building that. Our next color is going to be yellow. Remember that as soon as you write case, you're going to pass in the value, and then you're going to use your colon, and then we'll go ahead and we'll use our color type of primary and put our break statement in there. And then I'll just create the remaining case values. So our next one's going to be for green, and our final one will be for blue. In PHP, there are tools that aren't functions, but they still do something in our scripts. An example of this would be the print statement. Another example is the break statement. A break exits the current structure, be it a switch or an if-else conditional or a loop. The last part that we're going to need to add to our switch statement in order to complete it is the default. So we're going to come down here and we're going to type default with a colon, and then we're going to put the message that we want. So I'm just going to have it print my error message, and we'll go ahead and put our OK and set it equal to false. And then of course I need to exit the switch statement, so I'll use my break statement. And there's our switch statement. If we save this and we go back into the browser and fill out our form, and if I go ahead and don't pick a color and submit, I should get my error message, which I do. And if I come back to the form and pick a color and submit the form, then it's going to give me my message that my favorite color is green and it's a secondary color. So as you can see, the switch statement allows us to do the exact same thing as our else-if statement. The default case down here is the equivalent of the else clause that we use in the original conditional, and the cases are like the else-if statements. So switch statements can certainly help you to consolidate your code a little bit more. Sometimes they're a little bit easier to read, so you might want to use those instead of your else-if statements. It is worth mentioning that the default case is not required in a switch conditional, but if it's used, you should always make it the last case. It is possible that you set up a switch so that if the value isn't met by one of the cases, then nothing would happen. And just remember that if you are using a string in your switch conditional as the case value, it is case sensitive, meaning that if we had written something like capital yellow like this, but the value that was getting passed was lowercase, then our script would not work correctly.